as human beings, there are two things that are the most important to us, at least in my view, which is the value of being seen and the value of being heard. So in a conversation, if someone feels seen or heard, you've done an incredible job and you've offered that person in front of you dignity. It's also important to leap, because every great thing that we have created as human beings, it has come out of us leaping forward.
What has been something that you have been trying to overcome lately?
I think...
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the 1% Podcast. As always, I want to thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys for showing support, and thank you guys for showing love on every single episode. I have a guest with me today, Kudzai King. I do want to get into a little bit of our story, how we met, because I think it's actually hilarious how we met. But I want to say thank you for joining me here today.
Oh, no, it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure connecting with human beings further. It's always nice.
How we met, we both went to a party. I don't know if you would consider it a party. It was
maybe more like I guess like an art event.
Yeah.
But it for to your point, it was a house.
Yeah.
It was an apartment. So I guess it turns into a party when it becomes like that. But at least that's my own opinion.
Yeah. It was I have like a little bit of, not many people know this, but like I have a little bit of social anxiety. So you were actually the first person that I talked to at that event. Like I didn't speak to any, besides Andreas, like I didn't speak to anybody else, but you were one of the only people that I spoke to truthfully. And like you helped me feel more comfortable, like going up to different people or talking with different people. So I guess it was just that like one interaction. It's so funny how
it sort of opened everything.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's... I hate that I'm going to dive into philosophy already.
Let's do it. Let's get right.
This is the beginning. So my belief is that as human beings, the purpose of getting out there, or rather affording yourself to other human beings, is to build a sense of familiarity, or rather a sense of empathy, because then when you speak to people expecting them to respond in your own particular way, you've kind of lost the battle. So I tend to approach conversations where I'm actually really curious, like, who are you? What makes you tick? And all of that. So I feel like when I do that, I think as human beings, there are two things that are the most important to us, at least in my view, which is the value of being seen and the value of being heard. So in a conversation, if someone feels seen or heard, you've done an incredible job and you've offered that person in front of you dignity.
Do you think that we've lost that sense of curiosity, though? That we've lost the sense of curiosity in others because we have social media? We can easily look up, oh, who's Avi Whisperer? Who's Kudzai? Like we can look them up, but instead of like we find out, we get to put this piece of the puzzle together, and we get to see this beautiful mosaic. Like, do you think that we've lost that sense of curiosity within one another?
I don't think we've lost that sense of curiosity. I think that we've just grown up. Of course, we're living in a different generation that has been afforded by technology that now sort of like implicates every part of our social hierarchy or our social functioning as a society. But I think that the more you grow older, the more you create barriers around you, the more you hold on to ideas that sometimes feel like your very own ideas. So I think that curiosity has not really gone. I think we're just settling in. So much like the generation before us, our parents, I feel like they had their own way of viewing life. I feel like we're also developing a way that we view life, whether that's right or not. I feel like every generation is their own thing, and then that makes people feel like maybe we're creating a separation. But yes, but what you're feeling is correct. We are just becoming more of ourselves, and it's kind of terrifying.
It is, because I guess the way I view it is that I think that I hear a lot that we're in a isolation pandemic. Like we're in this pandemic of isolationism, where we don't want to interact with others because we have the phone, we have the necessary resources to be able to communicate with other humans wherever they are in the world. And I think that we have lost the sense of social skills, and we have lost the sense of humility to be able to connect with another person. And I think that depending on who you are, I was blessed with older parents that they were kind of more old school, and I think that depending on the perspective that you have on those viewpoints, I think that you either are this incredibly over isolated person that doesn't talk to anybody, that just, like plays video games or does all these other things, that doesn't encounter social interaction, where nowadays it's so easy, even with dating apps, to just meet somebody and get so infatuated off the first text message or off the initial text messages. Like, even we go as far as that, or maintaining friendships or maintaining a sense of connection with another individual because we're shielded behind this phone. And I mean, I fall victim to it as much as anybody else does, because we've been accustomed to it since like 14, 15 years old when it came out.
Yeah.
So now it's like here, I guess in a better term, is like, here am I and here are you, and here's this barrier in between us, and now we're not communicating, or we're not talking about our ideas or our thoughts or our philosophies that we've gone through certain experiences, and now we kind of acquired this knowledge. And I think that to combat that, we just need to be more social, right? Like, we need to go to coffee shops. Like, going to the club is not going to be a social interaction for you. We have to go to places that inquire and meet social interaction.
No, I think where you're coming from is absolutely correct. I think we have forgotten a bit of that social normalization that we've had in our communities. We are a creature of progression, whether that progression stifles our movement or keeps us going, or slows it, or or stops it entirely, right? Progression as human beings is something that we're addicted to. And so we invent new things, new technologies, hoping that they help. They help us gain more time, gain more health, gain more connection in society. And initially, when social media was created, it was a way to connect better with each other. And yet these amazing tech industries have they've taken away that sense of being together. So yes, it has made us a little more lonely than we used to. And I think the only way to deal with that is, I think we need to go back to the root of the problem. Because sometimes we see a problem and then we come up with solutions from that problem without really looking at what solution actually fixes the problem. I've seen in certain countries like Australia, they've banned social media for kids. I feel like that's probably one of the ways to foundationally, put that into the space, to actually say we value human connectivity, we value human closeness. Because if you look at the pandemic, and the reason why many people went through mental strife is because of those two things that I mentioned in the beginning, the value of being seen and the value of being heard. And both of those things were not in existence because we're all separated. And I feel like that worsened already a terrible situation. It just gave it more fuel, and this is why we feel it even more now. I don't know.
What was that? So I guess we just kind of went into it without getting to know you on a deeper level. But you at that party, you told me that gathering, you told me a little bit of where you came from, and I think that to understand who you are now, or to understand the perspective and the wisdom, I think we need to know what about that part of your life, about
that part. Can you specify?
Yeah, the part of your life where you grew up in Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
I think we need to know I think we need to get an understanding. Well, I've already got the understanding, and I think it's an incredible story, but I want the listeners to be able to kind of grasp that and understand that a story of perseverance.
Thank you. Well, it's a long story, but I'll try and mash it up within this podcast.
Yeah.
But I was born in Zimbabwe, which is a very, very curious country, highly intellectual country. We focus on studying things like science, being a doctor. So when you're raised as a child, you're expected to go through one of those avenues in order to, I guess, gain a standing in society. But for rebels like myself, growing up as a kid, I could tell that I was a creative soul. And at that point, I didn't really see my mother as a creative person, although this is how she started. My mother was a serial entrepreneur, or rather is a serial entrepreneur. But then she started out, from what is considered as my country's ghetto. That's where she was born. And with me on her back when my dad died, she kind of, went for me from one house to the next until she built up such a following of quality because of the dedication that she had in her work that she started her first company, and then that kept on going. And so because of that, I got to experience a little bit of poverty and a little bit of wealth at the same time, which is a very strange place to be. Mm-hmm. Because even my holidays, I used to go to my grandmother's place where my mother was raised. But going back to the story, I think I'm extending the story.
That's okay. That's all right.
Going back to the story, so I grew up a middle to upper class sort of life, but one of the things that my mother never stopped communicating was the importance and value of hard work, because she had seen it and she had scraped the ground in order to get it. She made sure that she set up a few things in place. So pocket money, I stopped receiving pocket money at the age of 9. So from the age of 9 on, I worked for everything that I ever had. After school, I would go to my mother's hair salon, one of her hair salons, and then I would go and do women's hair. She did not care whether I was a man or a female. She just knew that the dedication of hard work goes a long way, and she instilled that value in me. And so with that fuel, and that sense of rebelliousness already, it kind of helped me propel myself out of, this very expected space that I was meant to be in, especially coming in from a very intellectual family. And it just made me stick to whatever it is that I loved. And, I'm glad that above everyone else who was not supporting me, my mother was not one of them. Mm. Yeah. So, so Zimbabwe, and then at some point we moved to England, and I spent some time in England. I had a great time there, did a little bit of schooling. And then right after I moved to Cape Town after visiting Cape Town for a holiday, fell in love with it, and I was based there for about 5 years until I decided to move to New York. Mm. Yeah, so quite a journey.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
How was the dynamic of losing your father at a relatively young age? Like how did that have an impact on you personally?
I think losing my dad at such a young age, I was actually at the age of 5. I think it was this is sharing a deeply personal part, but I'm glad that we're at this part in our conversation, because one of the things that I told myself last year to dedicate myself towards was sharing my story more and more. Because we build up so many of these secrets, and then we trust this person and trust that person, and then maybe the relationship ends, and then you're like, oh, God damn it, why did I tell them that? That's my secret. But then I realized the value of, it's your story. You're not going to have another body outside of this one, at least as far as we know. there's so many doctrines and so many things that we've committed ourselves towards that might lead us to the next chapter of our lives after this one. But as me right now, this is the only life that I know. So I decided to start sharing my story more and more, just in case it helps someone else, but also not just helping someone else, but relieving some of that pressure. Because much like one of my favorite scenes in a movie from a movie I watched as a child, 8 Mile. I wasn't supposed to be watching it, but you say everything terrible about yourself, and then no one else can say anything about you after.
That was such
You're
an
done.
incredible
Like
scene.
it was
That
a
was
great
such an
scene.
incredible scene.
So just using that as an example, I decided to start telling my story more. So hence me now sharing this. It's just a longer way of explaining the question that you asked.
Yeah.
So my father, that was my first experience of death. It was a normal day. We were celebrating something as a family, so people were sitting in the lounge, and he was, my dad was prepping up to go to work. He was a pilot during that time, and I was told to check on him because he had been showering. He'd been prepping up, and I went there. I went to the shower, and I found him on the ground. So as a child, you don't have enough comprehension of what you're saying, that sometimes people think that you're not making sense when you communicate. So I told everyone that dad is laying on the ground, in the shower rather. So logically, as an adult, when you hear that, it doesn't click. So I think he lay there for quite a while, and I would say about 15 minutes. Then after that 15 minutes, then they went to check on him, and for sure he was laying on the bottom of on the floor of the shower. So that was my first experience of death, and I think what that did to me, I think when you're that young, you don't know how to handle pain as well. So I think what it did was actually made me close off emotions entirely. I don't think I mourned my father until this year, actually. Like, properly mourned my father. I mean, I felt the absence a lot. I would see other kids with their dads and wish, but then I never felt pity for myself because of that toughness. I think that just became a defense mechanism. And then from there on, I guess last year, my father died at the age of 31, and this year I turned 31 years old, and I felt so sorry that he died that young. And then I think I also just felt the loss of a father after 31 years, which is strange.
Yeah.
But that's my story.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I don't think I've been hearing grieve a lot, and I mean, we grieve all the time, don't we? Like, we grieve relationships, we grieve friendships, even people that pass on. But I don't think we ever know where that love goes. I believe it was Andrew Garfield had a quote that said, "Grief is love with nowhere to go."
Mm-hmm.
And man, that was one for me. Like, whenever you're grieving, a friendship or a relationship or somebody that has passed on, you don't know where that love goes, because you want to give it out,
Mm-hmm.
but it's stored, right? Like, you can't, at least for a person that has passed on, you can't give it to them anymore.
No.
It's dormant until the next time that you see each other, or the next time that you see them again. And I think it's weird that we go on life and we hold the grief and we hold the memories, and it's, the way I think about it is just stored trauma, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, are we ever able to release all of that?
Mm-hmm.
Because yes, we can, mourn, and we can, and this is coming from somebody that never lost, I never lost anybody to death, but I have lost friends, I have lost relationships, and it's a weird place to be in, because you don't know how to you repress it, in a sense, because you can't express it, so you're repressing it. So anything that you feel, you're pushing down. And then obviously we know that that's how depression is caused. But it's a very weird conundrum that we go through as human beings, that we're constantly grieving, we're constantly suffering in that regard. And then it comes to a point where, I guess, as humans, where do we accept that we're going to be inevitably grieving throughout our whole life?
I think pain is intrinsically attached to existence. I don't think from, I hate to be a bit stern, but I don't think from birth that we're promised anything on this earth. I feel like when you grab a hold of the things that fill up your soul, fill up your cup, the people that fill up, the love that you give, I feel like, you're sailing above the clouds. Because grieving, much like happiness, much like all the human emotions that we feel, good and bad, they're part of existence. And sometimes, they can be so overbearing and so powerful in one singular form when something happens in your life. But there's a phrase that I love, and I don't remember who said it, but I found it on Instagram, not too far back. But it says, actually, I think it was by Will Smith, if I'm not mistaken. Will Smith was getting advice from someone else, and he was saying, "Oh, so right now you think." You think that all this sadness and all this pain. I'm paraphrasing. All this pain. You feel like this is gonna last forever? No, this shall not last. And then he takes a beat and then says, "Oh, you think all this joy, all this happiness that you're going through, all these beautiful things, you think this is gonna last? This too shall not last." So this is why I admire a religion, much like I guess a practice, Buddhism. I don't subscribe to it on a personal level, but it's accepting of life itself. So I feel like when we go through the cycles that we go through life, I think it's important to remember that lesson above all else.
I guess like a thought that comes to mind is there anything that you haven't is there anything in your life that you haven't grieved properly besides your father's death? Like, is there other relationships or friendships that, since you've been since that it was expressed that the emotions were closed off, like you stopped.
Mm.
um is there Has that itself, the closing off of the emotions, has that affected any of your
My
interpersonal relationship?
So I think before the age of 24, certainly. I kind of, I grew up in media. I grew up in entertainment and fashion. And so what that tends to do is it opens up many doors and sometimes not the right ones. Right. So in my experience of growing up in a fast pace in entertainment, I quickly went through all some of the worst things that that we learn throughout our adult life. So by the age of 24, I felt like I had, this is when I had my first depression. And I call this a depression of change, because everything converged together at some point, and it all met at this particular pivot, and I had to decide what I actually wanted to become in the future. And I chose a different path than the one that I was leading. I was partying, I was doing, it was the many casual encounters, on a sexual level, and all the things that you imagine, would exist in an entertainment world. I kind of went through it in a very fast pace. So by the age of 24, this is when things really started changing internally inside of me. This is when I started reading more and more books on things that I didn't understand. I started reading on philosophy. I started reading on psychology. I started reading on just understanding the human brain and the human mind and the human spiritualism. Reading many different doctrines, and that opened me up to understand human emotions. Because at that point, I felt like I was very closed off. So that opened up channels to deal with family trauma, dealing with friendships and romantic relationships, and I guess if I had not gone through a fast period of time on dealing with all these things that I dealt with while as a young person within the fashion and entertainment world, I don't feel like I'll be who I am right now today. So it certainly helped along to get me into those spaces of emotion.
Was there like a certain, I know that you expressed that you were partying, but was there a certain moment that you can recall that just like, was there a switch that just flipped, and it was just like, what am I even doing? Was there just a flip that switched in your brain that's like, this is not where I want to be?
Yeah. Actually, massive switch. And this particular switch was, I won't tell you all the details because it involves people that are now friends.
Yeah.
But I was stuck in a different country. I didn't have my passport with me because something had happened, some dramatic thing had happened. And I remember being in an immigration office, and this is in Europe, by the way. And I just remember looking at my life, and I had to tell these immigration people like why all of these things were happening, and they all laughed, and we had such a ball, even though it was such a serious moment. And it went from 4 people from 4 people to calling 6 people to about, like, I think we ended up being about 12 to 15 people in one office, me just repeating this story of the crazy thing that had happened. But from then on, I think my heart kind of grew black, because I think that I needed something super dramatic, really dramatic, to happen in order for me to change my lane and change my course. And that particular incident definitely did it.
Do you think that sometimes we need to get to that space where that dramatic thing happens to us, or that event or circumstance happens to us that alters our perspective and kind of embraces or enforces change?
I think the word that I would use in that particular case would be failure. I think failure is one of the most beautiful things that can happen to us as human beings. I think wisdom is learning, or rather, knowledge is learning from other people's mistakes. But when you yourself learn to touch fire, and then you learn that fire is really hot, it's a very tall chance for you to be able to go back and touch that same fire again, because that's wisdom. You've learned it, you've tasted it, you've felt it on your skin, you have embraced yourself fully with it, and now you know how it feels. So failure is something that I embrace in life. I feel like it's important for growth, as painful as it is sometimes.
What has been your greatest failure? Because in the sense that we're talking about how great and beautiful it is, and I am on that same spectrum and boat, and I do believe and subscribe to that message. I do think that it's the most beautiful thing, because it's the catalyst for change, ultimately. Mm-hmm. And what has been your greatest failure?
I think I've made some. I think in the past I've definitely made some terrible moves when it came to my career. I feel like I've had I've swung pretty heavily, and then one of those misses was certainly a pretty hard one. I think definitely the pandemic was a showcase of that. But I think we learn, because as soon as I realized that I had overreached, or rather underreached, I knew that there were a few things that I needed to cover. And during that pandemic, I took on 2 courses with Harvard on marketing and finance, and I came out stronger at the end of it, and I applied them onto the things that I do. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's always those choices that we inevitably make, and then the similar to the stove reference, that we understand that the stove is hot, but then we need to pivot.
yeah, absolutely. What has there been any highlight in your particular life of something, of a failure that you recognize as one?
I think now, um, I think in this period of life, to the outside view, or to the outside perspective, would be deemed as, this is what success looks like. This is what I think people get sometimes my life like misconstrued. I think that people misunderstand me in a way that they deem me as successful, or they deem me as this incredibly like disciplined, motivated person, but it's farthest from the truth. I think that every day I wake up, I feel like a failure because I'm not where I want to be. And I think that I do believe that failure is when you stop trying, but I think that since I'm not where I want to be, I wouldn't classify it as failure, but I would deem it as a sense of, I don't know, because I don't think that I'm misunderstood, but I think that people get a certain perspective, and they see it from the outside view, and they see me, and like I said, I think that they have this different perception
Of who you are.
yeah.
Well, so my understanding of who we are in other people's eyes and our own eyes, I feel like we exist in reality, in different realities with different people. I feel like who we are with people is still a very much true part of us, even if sometimes it's the perception of who we are. I feel like as human beings, the relationship that you have with your mother is a relationship that you have with your mother. It's not the same it's not the same compared to the relationship that you have with your best friend. The same is is similar with your romantic partner, or your teacher, or your mentor, whatever the case may be. And so I feel like we are a myriad of different people, and sometimes how we feel inside about who we are is still is a great reflection of who we are, but how other people sometimes see us as well, I feel like there is truth in that. So perhaps if people see you as successful, they have projected that onto you, and maybe that's not a terrible look on you either, because it is part of what they see in their eyes. The definition might be very different in your eyes.
That's a good way to put it. And I think I've self-sabotaged myself in that regard, because I think when I look at my life, I think that there has been some success, and I think there has been some quote unquote failure. And maybe I just need to lean into that, and lean in and accept that this is what success may look like. As it's not my definition and as other people's, that doesn't mean that the definition is not correct, right? It's just another person's perspective of what they see, or what they believe, or maybe what they deem as success.
Yeah. don't quote me on this because I heard it as part of a conversation, but it was saying that, and I might be, chopping the ears entirely terribly, but it says that about 38 years ago, we all didn't shower with hot water. 38 years ago. So how we see success right now and then are two different things. Hot water was considered a sense of luxury. And then now we're living in these times and it's not. So even sometimes how we see success itself, the definition of success, sometimes it's all relative. You might just be the most successful person. You've got food, you've got water, you've got a community. I would imagine that you have a sense of community of some sort, and that you work, you provide for yourself somehow, one way or the other, and you have an incredible podcast. So
that is, when you look at it from that perspective, I guess it's like the famous Dr. Wayne Dyer quote: "When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at begin to change." And
I like that.
It is that perspective, and it is that narrative. And some of my friends, and if he's watching this, he has instilled or tried to instill something into me that I had work yesterday, and he kind of he looked at me and he said that like, why are you unhappy? Like, why are you not smiling? Like, you're working, you're going to school, you're doing the podcast, like, you're doing all these things. Why are you not happy? And I don't know if it's this self-fulfilling prophecy that I need to be at a certain place, or that I would love for this podcast to bring some, monetary value or some type of return on investment, that I could be seen as like, this is valuable or this is successful, right? Because at the end of the day, it's just all metrics, right? The follower count, the subscribers, it's all metrics, right? That doesn't mean that you aren't successful, as you pointed out with the hot water reference, or just even having a bed, or even having a house to live in. And I think I don't know if for me that is something that propels me to go further, or if it's this darkness that I need to overcome and heal, because I'm not this whatever that I want to be. But that doesn't mean that along the way that I'm still not successful, or I'm still not on my way to get there. And I think it's just reframing the mind and reframing the brain. And I've been trying to do that and talk to myself more. But I guess it's just an inevitable fight that each of us probably has to overcome in terms of our definitions of success.
No, absolutely. I agree. I think that the measuring of it is always tricky, because that's based upon each and every expectation that we've built up in our lives, on a personal level or external level, right? But I feel like life is too short. I feel like I feel like time is the most probably valuable thing that we can have, and I tend to see myself, whenever I get into a mind space like that of lack of belief in the vision and the mission that I've chosen. I often remind myself, because I'm in entertainment. I often remind myself this. Because we do film and we do photography, and it's an entertainment company, and I often remind myself it's just a camera, Kudzai. It's just a camera. It's not the end of the world. And even though some of the things that I'm doing, I'm so passionate and so involved in the whole entire process, I think sometimes laughing at yourself and taking a step back while doing so, I think it's important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because there was a video that you recently posted that you said that you're inspired by, passion, or like the projects that you work on. And I guess it's like, how can one become passionate about something, or be passionate about something, but also like detach yourself kind of to what you said about either outcomes or the expectations, or the expectations of others or self, And that's you're kind of, when you're passionate about something, you love it, right? But then at the same time, when you don't achieve that outcome, or you don't achieve the goal that you've initially tried to reach or achieve, then you kind of set yourself up for disappointment. So how have you personally been able to like detach, while also still having that fire and igniting passion?
So I think life is very. My understanding of life is as annoying as this particular realization is. I think we often we're in many given spaces, we're often opening one door, stepping in with one leg while the other one is still outside, right? So, and what I mean in that is life is a balance, right? The lean over on one end too much and things destabilize. Lean over on the other side, then things destabilize. So I think in the great words of a book that I read called The Untethered Soul, which is so amazing. It kind of changed my mind. It kind of freaked me out because I was like, oh, wait, I can have conversations with my own mind, um, what that book helped me to do was it made me aware of my mind. It made me aware of sometimes silly things that cloud my mind. And I learned to, just like the river, looking at the river, throwing in a little leaf from one end and just seeing that leaf pass through. That's sometimes how I look at my problems when I have them. I'm like, okay, I recognize you, problem. Do I have the tools to deal with you right now? Maybe I don't. And why I mentioned time earlier in this, but when I began this particular conversation, is sometimes I've realized that when I focus too deeply on that one leaf that I've thrown into the river, and I'm so fixated and so obsessed about it, now I'm not even seeing the beauty and the beauty and vibrance of the whole entire scenery. I'm not seeing the horizon of that lake, because I'm just so fixated on that one particular leaf. And I if one of the things that I love to do is I love to fail fast. I love to fail fast, but I still believe in failure. I don't want to fail for a long time. So when I can't do anything with that, I leave it, let it float. And as soon as that, and then I find that whenever I let it go, whenever I let go of the stress, a solution normally comes to me, and I'm able to fix whatever problem is happening in a quick manner.
Mm.
Yeah.
It's like when you hold something so tightly, there's no space to infiltrate the when it's like if I'm holding the can, right, and I'm gonna break the can, but I'm also not allowing any space to come through, and you're just creating this inevitable tension, right? And there's no space for the life or for the universe to come in and say, hey, like, I have a solution for you if you just sit and listen.
Yeah.
Or you just kind of meditate on it, or you just sit with it. And I truthfully believe that that's why, like, meditation is so great, or observing your thoughts is so great, is because when you do this process, like you said, you're just watching that leaf go flow into the water. You're just sitting there watching it all happen, right? There's no judgment, there's no emotions behind it. You're just simply taking a step back, or sitting in the passenger seat and just watching the ride kind of happen. And it's definitely a beautiful thing. I've heard so many great things about that, The Untethered Soul, as well.
It's a beautiful book. It's jarring to read. It's so small, but it packs so much information in there. Yeah.
What has been the best piece of knowledge that you've received?
It's a phrase that I've lived by for years now, and it comes. I first heard it from my mother's lips. She did not coin it. It's a term. It's rather an idiom that exists within many African countries, and what it says is, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you wanna go far, go together. And so my belief, I think I told you, after the age of 24, there's a lot of things that changed within me, and one of the things that did change is building community. It's so important for me to build a sense of community around me, and I recognize that there's so many great things that I'm good at doing and executing and bringing to life. But then there's also a lot of other things that I'm not so good at, and that's okay. When you grow with that, when you grow and you get rid of that ego, you realize that we all need each other. There's a reason why we live in a society. We could all choose to live in the woods. There's so much land out there on the earth, but we all congregated towards certain places. There's a reason why we're in New York. There's a reason why people are in Toronto. There's a reason why people are in London, in Berlin, because we realize that we're stronger as a human society than separate. And I feel like because of that, like with whatever I do, I put people in positions of power, even if they end up shining much more than me, especially when we're working together. But ultimately, at the end of the day, when you fill in the right positions with the right people, my God, they make you look so good.
They sometimes make you look better than how you would have done it.
Exactly. So that's probably one of the greatest things that I carry inside of me. Community building is so important to me.
And it's all about the ego, right? Like, we just don't allow other people to shine because we feel like the shine would be taken from us.
Yeah.
It's just all of that paradox of the ego, and that constant conversation or dialogue with the ego is something that some people never understand, or we may never understand. And I think it's such a complex thing that I don't know truthfully if you'll ever understand it, or you'll ever be able to fully kind of process it, or get to know why it does certain things. But I think it's a level of acceptance that the enlightened ones have reached, that I guess we should all try or aspire to be. It's just the ego is just like, it's just such a weird thing, because you all of a sudden you'll see, like, why am I doing this, or like, why am I judging this person, or why am I looking at this situation and why am I comparing, or why do I feel like I'm better than them, or why do I feel like I'm doing this, or why do I feel like I'm doing that? It's like this complete opposite version of maybe who you are. Maybe it's I guess a perspective I would like to know is like the ego as we know it is separate, or a separate entity of us, but to some regard it's also us as well.
I think much like that phrase of balance that I mentioned earlier. I feel like ego is very toxic, but it serves a purpose in our life. It serves as a sense of identity, because if it's totally non-existent in us, then sometimes you don't hold the values that you hold them, the values that you hold, or the values that you've been taught, because it's like, there's that ego, like, yo, I'm from New York, how dare you, we there's a give me a little more respect, type of thing. So ego and identity are so close, but then also there is a dark side of ego. Much like there's a yin and yang, there is a dark side to everything. And ego, I feel like it definitely serves a purpose in holding our ground with certain things, certain ideas and values. But then when you hold those ideas too stringently and you're not accepting of any new ideas, then I feel like then you imbalance it, and you can be led astray quite easily.
Do you think that that's something that can be changed though? Like, not acquiring new knowledge and then adapting yourself to new knowledge? Because from my understanding in psychology, we have either we have a growth mindset, or we have a I forgot the other mindset. It's either a growth mindset or a I forgot. I'm blanking on the other one, but essentially we grow. We continue to grow, and then the other mind is that we go through certain things, or we experience certain things, and we're just like, there's just no growth there. Like it's either you're growing or you're not. There's two. Everybody either has the growth mindset, or I'll have to look it up later. But it's either the growth mindset or the other mindset where you're not accepting this new knowledge. But do you believe that, or from maybe your personal experience or understanding of life, that you have experienced the other side and then turned into the growth mindset, or has it been? Do you think it'll always be you're either growth mindset or you're not?
I think it's something that you can definitely learn over time, but it is, I think realization is important, because we don't know what we know until we know it. And so recognizing that you are in a particular stage in your life is important, because then you can come up with tools and solutions in order to deal with that. I think that I have certainly come in from a space of ignorance, though it's debatable how much of that ignorance existed in my life before the age of 24. I still feel like, I was still, as a group of friends, like we protected our space. I grew up with, a small circle of friends, and we were kind of, cool kids and all of that. And people kind of followed us around, and we made sure that no one would penetrate the circle. But sometimes when you hold on those ideas too strong again, it means that you're not accepting of any new knowledge. And so, I didn't see myself for a long time until that age of realization happened. And as soon as I made that realization, aware to my consciousness, I looked back and said, wow, what have I been doing all these years? So much like a person that needs therapy, one has to know that they need therapy in order for them to go to therapy. Otherwise, you can force someone else, and they will just never recognize what they need to recognize. So I think to change your mind, there must be a click that happens. And I feel like things like travel, things like meditation, things like things that take us out of the monotonous way that we live, they tend to inspire a spark inside of us. So I think it is possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess now that you are older, what is something that you were told when you were younger that you thought was real, but as soon as you got older, you realized it was a lie?
I think my experience is actually the other way around. My experience is not necessarily things that I was told as a child that were real, or rather that were not real, that I realize are real now. It's more so like things that I wasn't told, that I wish I was told earlier. I wish parents and adults availed themselves more to how we all as humanity don't know exactly what we're doing.
I think everybody can relate to that one. That's a good one.
I think when I look back at let's say the way I was raised, I am in awe of the way I was raised, because no one told me, my mom had me when she was 19, so very young. No one told me that a person can be 19 and be that strong and be an entire adult. But then in my eyes, my mother was perfect. So when I saw her mistakes, I was just always so appalled. Like, how could she fail? How could she do this and do this and do this? And then the more you grow older, the more you start giving those people empathy. You start appreciating. At the age of 19, I don't know what I would have done with a child. I'm sure I would have stepped up to the plate, but To be raised by someone who was 19 and to be a full adult and still have amazing experiences and things to share about that person, I feel like that's a crazy accomplishment.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think as adults we don't know exactly what we're doing. We're grown adult children, and again the pandemic reminded me, because governments were saying, "Oh no, 2 weeks in, 2 weeks in, we'll be fine, we'll be fine." 3 months in, I'm like, yeah, they don't know what they're doing.
I think that might be the biggest misconception of life, is that we know what we're doing. And I
Yeah.
think you don't ever truly know what you're doing. I think you're just winging it along the way.
No.
You have an idea, you have an inspiration, you have something that you believe in, and you're going to run with it. Or you may not have that, and you're just going as life as it is. I think that might be the biggest thing, probably the biggest lie that you hear, is that people have it figured out. Because I don't even think people like Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk have it figured out, because he's still trying to figure out space travel. He's still trying to figure out all these things. And I think we need to uncondition ourselves in that regard as well. Like myself included, is unconditioning ourselves to believe that we need to have it figured out, or by a certain age that we need to have all these things. Because I think you're just setting yourself up for, number one, I think disappointment, but number two, I think an unrealistic expectation, because life is going to lean left, it might lean right, and you might just be smack in the middle.
Absolutely.
Um,
Like, I'll give you an example of how tough I feel like, especially like the thing like parenthood is. Like, two of my friends just had a kid recently, and I've been very, very close. I've kind of babysat. The child is 3 months years old, and I'm sure like both of them will probably see this podcast at some point. But I have a newly found respect for both of them. The amount of work that they're putting in, my God, no sleep, no sleep. And when the child, when a child cries and you don't know exactly what they need, my God, it's a very terrifying process, right? And I think there's a time that I had a conversation with them. I'm just like, how do you remain so strong? I feel like I would be completely terrified. They're like, yeah, we're also terrified, but we're just doing what we can. And that, just really connects me back to my parents. I'm just like, wow, respect,
yeah.
because it's tough.
I was told once that bravery is despite how you feel, or bravery is you being
I
nervous.
think I need a napkin.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna use a tie.
Okay.
Okay.
I think I was told this. I was told that bravery is being afraid to do something, or being nervous about it but still doing it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like being a parent but knowing that you're afraid or you're anxious about it, and going head first into it. That's bravery.
Yeah.
Right? Moving somewhere across the country and not having a dollar to your name, or and chasing a dream. That's bravery. Like, people thought Kanye West was crazy when he first came. 2000, what was it, 2002, 2003? Or no, it was way before that, actually. And he came all the way from Chicago to New York City. No record deal, no nothing. And he came, and that's bravery.
That's bravery.
It's despite what you're currently feeling, the anxiety, and still doing it anyways. You can be anxious, you can be worried about it or nervous about it, but still leaning in and choosing to be brave. Like, I don't think the most heroic acts are, they just woke up and they said, I'm going to be brave today. They said, despite how I'm feeling in this current moment, I know I could not do it, or I know that I could allow this anxiety or this anxiousness or this nervousness win or overcome me. But I think that the true bravery is, despite of that, you still choose to lean into the act of courage, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
No, I think that's a great explanation of what bravery is. It's waking up in the morning knowing that, oh my God, for sure I am scared to hell, but waking up and still facing it nonetheless.
yeah.
I think that's probably what is, giving us the amount of progression that we have as humanity right now.
Do you think that we are still? Do you think what do you think the progression is that we are of humanity? Like,
Uh,
is it AI? Do you believe that it's AI? Do you believe that we've digressed as humanity? Because we either progress or we digress.
I've got a bit of a controversial view when it comes to that. I think as human beings, we often. I'm gonna wipe this thing away
Yeah.
before I begin a long tirade. Um, okay. So I've got a bit of a controversial view when it comes to that particular question. I think at most times as human beings, we look at history and we look at history in our particular time, the recent history that we remember. We forget to look at the progression of where we come from as a whole, right? We come from multiple ancestors that have existed before us, and we're the wildest accomplishment of their efforts. To be in a podcast in a comfortable seat, having conversations about life, like we are the wildest dreams possible. And drilling in a little more on that, I think technology has always been a friend and our enemy. I'm sure when we came from horses to Henry Ford's Model T, you know, that progression I'm sure was terrifying, because there was this guy who was used to a particular way of doing things for such a long time, rearing of horses and mixing the right breeds, and having a full support system. And then there's this guy who's working on what people would consider a moving death machine, a metal death machine. You know, that leap already, it was, it's tough for this person that's got horses, actual assets, to move over to this particular person who's made a car. But progression must happen. And even though technology as of late, especially when we speak about AI, a conversation like AI, it's difficult to see how that cannot affect us, because it is moving so fast. It's moving faster than many technologies that we've come up with in the past. But it is here, and we've had it for a long time. Predictive models, this is what helped us text all these years, you know. So we've had AI before. It's just becoming more and more smarter. And I feel like understanding technology when it comes in, despite that, I guess I'll use bravery, the concept of bravery that we come with. We should look at technology with bravery. How can it help our lives? But then also, how can we be protected? Because to stop it is to stop innovation, and we're addicted to any innovation. Whether, like I said, whether it's to our fault or our progression, we are addicted to moving up and learning new things, even though we try and hold the past back with the past. So I feel like where we are, just as humanity as a whole, I feel like we're in a really good space, man. I feel like the social normalcies of what used to exist is not what exists now. We don't have, uh, you know, poverty is not poverty is terrible, right? In any age, but poverty is not, starving to death anymore these days. When one country goes through enough strife, all the other countries huddle up these days, and we offer aid. Whether that aid is perfect or not, we offer aid. That didn't always exist. If a country went through famine, they went through famine and people died. And it's either you had to get yourself out of that space and go to a different geography, or you died along with people that stayed. Whether they chose those circumstances, or they were trying to run away from them. Health. Even though our healthcare system, especially in America, is terrible, right? It is expensive. There was a time that we didn't have healthcare. For a headache, people used to drill in someone's head. And this is not more than 100 years ago that I'm talking about this. Right? So healthcare is amazing because we've got people, even though we live longer for a terrible lifestyle, we used to die at the ages of 50, 60. That was it. That's your life gone. Right? Your grandparents, you've had kids, and your life's purpose is done. Right? That was it. Let's talk about freedom of rights. Women have freedom of rights. People of different colors and ethnicities have got freedom of rights. Whether there's still some spice or some gnashing and gashing between those freedom of rights, there was a time that they did not exist at all. Women are seen as property. Black and brown people are seen as property. So when it comes to the progression of human beings, I feel like we've come a long way. And sometimes we're blind to the things that are actually beneficial about where we've come. It's very easy to miss that. So, much like that process of, observing the leaf in the water flowing past by, sometimes it's important to even take a bigger step back so that you can see the whole entire river or lake and say, oh, wow, okay. So that's how far this water that's pushing this leaf has come along.
It seems that we're so close to the painting that we don't understand it's a beautiful mosaic until we take a step back. Yeah, I do agree with that. I think that as a society, there's always going to be good and bad, right? There's always going to be good and bad in anything. Mm-hmm. As you said, the yin and yang. But I think that we haven't taken a step back in a long time to realize that
we kind of
this
got
is
it
where
good.
this is where we came from, This is where we came from.
Like, we don't have to go far in history. Here in New York, water used to be dangerous to drink outside the tap. Here in New York, but now you drink it, and we've got the best spring water coming in from upstate in the mountains.
Yeah, I mean, I still wouldn't swim in the water that we get.
No.
But
Hudson is not.
I definitely do see that, and I think that is a great perspective to have. Is that?
I mean, granted, the other side of it is, we've created systems that were supposed to make it easier for us to have more time, and yet we have so little time.
Oh man, that's another misconception that we think we have. Yeah. Is that we have all the time in the world.
We took mails to, a physical mail, we moved it over to an email. We created calendar entries that have got alarms, and yet we kind of feel suffocated with the time, with the time that we have left.
This has just struck a little bit of inspiration. We have, like you talked about, we have clocks, so we have this instant access, but then I think that misconception that we have time is the biggest one of them all.
Yeah,
we don't. I don't think we truthfully do, because have you ever woken up where, say for example, you could wake up at like 6 a.m., right? And you're like, oh, I got to get to this thing, get to this thing, get to this thing. And you realize it's like 4 p.m. And I haven't even finished off the checklist. Yeah. I haven't even finished off the checklist. I think that's the biggest misconception, is that we have time.
So there's one phrase, perhaps this is one other phrase that from a question that you asked me about things that you learned as a child. Um, there's one that used to annoy me, and it kind of still annoys me up to this day. Actually, it's people knowing your age, because for the most part, because of how young I started working.
So back to that thought.
Yes. I think you might have to jog my memory a bit.
Darn it.
Yeah.
So we were talking about time,
Mhm.
and then you went into how, when you were younger, that was something else that you learned about time.
Yes, yes. So the thing that I learned about time that probably annoyed me as a young person, I think I mentioned earlier that I started working very very early, and so by the time I was in my 20s or 21 there, I was in board meetings with people way older than me. I was the youngest. I was always the youngest in the room, and whenever people would find out my age, they would say, "Oh, you're just 21. No, you've got forever. You've got forever to figure it out. Oh, you're just this. You're just this. And you're just that." And I do realize the wisdom in that information that was shared with me, but I'm still 31 right now, and I'm still being told the same thing, and I'm realizing how valuable time is. Time is. I think there's something that I mentioned earlier, which is I said I like to fail fast, and it's only because I value time. So much like you, I see the clock. I wake up in the morning and I'm like, okay, it's just 6. What's next? And perhaps that is one thing that is common among all of us New York. Time has is a dedicated space in our lives. You're doing everything at every according to an hour, according to a minute that you've proposed. So I love the value of time, because I feel like that's one thing that we can't get in quantity or quality. I think having time to do other things is, it's valuable. It's probably one of the most valuable things that we can give to each other as humans.
But then on the to play devil's advocate, don't you think that in and obviously being in the city for some time now, I see how it is very like time is like, or we got blocks.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you think it's also a lack of presence when you're not able to leisure your time, right? Like if you're worried about deadlines, or you're worried about being here at this time or this time or this time, you're never really present, are you? Because you're always anxious about what's happening next, or you're always like, oh, I need to get here because I need to get here or do this.
Mm-hmm.
But you're not there's no sense of presence. There's no sense of like, okay, like it's a Sunday, right? And I have nothing planned. Or it's a Monday and I might have nothing planned. But that's beautiful because then I can create that. So do you feel like, with that being said, do you think that it's also a hindrance on our presence and understanding the present moment and being in the present moment?
I feel like both two things can exist in the same space and be both correct. So I, I'm probably going to be repeating this phrase quite a lot, or rather this particular word, balance, right? So purpose is what makes us wake up in the morning. At the most times when a human being reaches the end of their purpose, then they lose the value to live life. Purpose is what, it keeps us going. It keeps us going, and I feel like without purpose, then we become stagnant, and then that's how death begins. So purpose and time are easily connected, because when you do come up with an execution of a problem or a mission, it needs to be done in a said time, whether that said time is quick or whether the said time is slow. But so time and then progression become attached. But then when you now lose a sense of respecting time, then also things, or rather, let me rephrase it. You've measured your time. You've now decided this is the amount of time that I need to do this thing in order to complete my purpose, and if you concentrate on that part of yourself too closely, this is where now you lead into things like burnout, because now you're not paying attention to what's happening in front of you. It's much like that famous thing that CEOs say, where they say, write a business plan, and after you're done writing it, throw it in the trash, because life is going to come at you with all sort of different things, and you're going to have to react in real time sometimes. And with time, you need to be able to observe while you're still leading on to your mission, to whatever it is that you've decided to do. It's also important to stop along the journey and pick up a flower, smell it, and move on. So too much of anything is terrible for you. So I feel like how we use time is important. How we observe it when we're moving through it is also important. This is why we've got holidays. This is why we've got work. This is why we've got spaces that you can take yourself through, like meditation. You can meditate in the morning, and suddenly you're no longer in a stringent space. And then sometimes maybe what you need is a walk, or you need a weekend away. Yeah. So working and resting, both important.
Equally important.
Equally important. One without the other can become our demise.
I've definitely heard that, like in the gym and stuff like that. That's been a very like popular saying, like hitting your workouts and progressing in that area is definitely important. But the more equally important thing is making sure that you're getting enough rest, and not even just like, rest, sleep, but also make sure that you're, taking the appropriate days off that your body needs to allocate to recover. So I do believe that it is, in a workaholic culture that we live in, it is very much easy to forget that message, right?
It is.
It is.
Especially when we're this, we're kind of a little older, but we're still young at the same time.
Yeah.
I think the youth of energy still is in our bones, but then also time is moving, So whatever it is that we're dedicating, the time that we're dedicating towards the pursuit, the other side of it also remains true, which is time is moving, and it's up to us in order to recognize its movement.
And figure out with that movement where are the
We'll
most
allocate
valuable.
the most valuable experiences within that time.
Yeah. That's an interesting one right there.
Yeah.
I want to get into the company that you've just created or have been creating. I think I'll give you the floor, but I definitely want you to speak on that, because I think it's what you're trying to do is an incredible thing, and it's different in a way that you don't really hear how tech and entertainment can like intertwine within itself. So
fantastic. I'm the co-founder and CEO of a company named Curious Minds Entertainment. I started the company with a friend of mine. His name is Eric Powers, and we both have different experiences from our different backgrounds. I myself have been in fashion and entertainment for the past 15 years, and he's been in tech and finance for the past 25 years. So we both decided to bridge the gap between entertainment and tech together, while embracing that with that word again, community. And so Curious Minds handles two different departments, and one handles fashion and commercials, and then the other side handles film and television. And we're not afraid of embracing the controversial, the edgy topics, edgy technology. Like right now, in the background, we're sort of integrating a few things with VR and AR, and I know like these are technologies that people are still trying to figure out, but I feel like leaping to the future, or rather staying either leaping to the future or staying adjacent to the future is good for the growth of any entity or any company. And yeah, so we've got a film coming out. We've got a film coming out within the film festival circuit. I won't mention too much about it, but that'll be our first film, and we are working, with several people within the industry to bring some realized stories that we've come up with on the commercial side and on the film side as well.
What do you hope to gain within this creation, and how does it differ from other companies that are in the same market as you right now?
So Hollywood is at a very tricky point right now, where blockbusters don't happen as they used to, and I think what happened is Hollywood created a formula. Every business is a formula, but they created a formula that worked way too well that we stopped innovating. And so within that lack of innovation, this is how we now have had, a terrible track history of movies, just going through terrible numbers in their opening week, and then the solution was pumping in more money. So a movie went from being made easily from 60 to 80 million, and now movies are made for $250 million, and that's before even the marketing is even introduced into the game, because those are the numbers that we also never speak about. Because with every marketing and distribution deal that you do, you're probably spending either the same amount in the budget that you gave for production, or you're spending double. So to make a successful movie, it's now almost costing $1 billion, and I feel like that's ridiculous. So one of the most important things that we're focusing on is story. I think story above all else. After you've hired the right team, the right people, and you trust their vision, you trust in their mission. I feel like after that it's story. If there's a lack of story, we're living in a very TikTok savvy world, and so we're just producing content for the sake of content, and sometimes we're losing people in that space, in that lack of space that we're not creating. So in this case, I'm working with people that incredibly talented people that know story down to their core. Story is what moves them in their craft. So it's story, and making sure that I'm collaborating with AI engineers and coders. I'm collaborating with companies like Intel, companies like I can't remember for a lack of a better term right now. I can't remember the particular term I wanted to mention, but we are working with all these companies to bridge that gap in between. And while we're making sure that we're not spending millions and millions of dollars. We are a small company, but I feel like we pack a punch.
We talked about before this podcast, when would information that we've learned or information that we've been given, when would it resurface? And it surfaced now. I took a class this past semester. It's called Industry, Audiences, and Institutions. And what we learned is that one of the pieces that we talked about was the lack of innovation or storytelling in American society, and how the greatest films before, like 10, 20 years ago, 30 years ago were so great, but then now it's like, how has America been innovated, or how have we kind of furthered society, or how have we been the top of the top in certain aspects, and we've kind of fallen off on the terms of innovation, right? Like the creations, or like being the top of anything in that regard of creation. Like, when was the last time that you could think about that America created something great?
It's difficult for a person like me who's a bit of a nerd to approach this particular question because I'm often looking for innovation wherever I can find it. Uh, so I would say that America does not necessarily have the influence that it used to have in creating new things,
That's exactly what I was referring to. Yeah.
but in that same breath, all these technologies that we are afraid of, these new technologies that we probably think are not changing our lives in real time as much. I feel, oh, I guess we're starting to see the impacts of them, but those technologies are also created in America.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like where America lacks above all else is not necessarily new ideas. It's more so, I think, when you're inside it, when you're inside America, and this is me speaking from the sometimes I look from the outside in, you know. I think what it is the stagnant infrastructure in America makes it feel like things are not progressing forward. When there's a few things that are innovative that are coming out, these are coming out in the spaces of science, tech, and even finance. Like we're constantly shifting things around. We might just become one of the biggest world leaders that might embrace cryptocurrency. That's a new technology.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So maybe I'm just a very optimistic human being.
Hey, listen, I'm with you on that optimism. I'm with you on that end.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was a good question that was posed. A good conversation, and it kind of surfaced and talking about the entertainment industry, at least, where we've not really created much, or where we were the industry leaders. Now we're kind of like the little brothers of the industry now.
I think what happened in my view is a couple of things. Firstly, using the same cookie cutter sort of way process of finding film, making film, and then presenting it to the world. So I think that's probably one of the things. The second thing is television is now distributed. The attention that television used to have is now distributed. It's no longer the same thing. People don't have the same areas in which they used to go to converge. Nowadays, you've got streamers, and streamers. They have taken all the majority of what used to exist on traditional television, and the rest of that has been taken by influencers and social media personnel. So it hasn't created a space for much innovation because I think people are just busy reacting to the lack or the loss of numbers. But what I will say this though, I feel like we can complain all we can about film, but no one complains about TV right now. Have you seen that? TV is thriving.
You think so?
Oh my God. Like, I feel like we've had a golden age of television, of movies. I feel like we're having a golden age of of TV series.
And you talk
Just in the world.
just in like Netflix, like all that.
Yeah, like,
Would you consider that TV though, or you consider that streaming?
TV will never be the same as it used to be. TV is now, I mean, all the things that these streamers are doing is basically TV. If you think about it.
Yeah.
We started out with no ads because that was better TV. And do you know what we now have? We've got ads, and then we've got streaming. And it's basically the same thing we used to have with, and now streaming companies are also doing live streaming. So now we've just gone back to the same model that we had.
Yeah. Just in a different form.
For not even just a different form, for more money.
Yeah.
And less services. Because now we're paying $20 to $30 for one streaming channel. Whereas before we used to pay maybe like 60 for the whole entire bundle.
Mm-hmm. You talked about influencers, and I would like to know, what are your current thoughts on, as you're building this company and probably looking for maybe potentially influencers as well. What is your current view on social media influencers or social media in general?
Well, I think given every the different platforms that have existed in entertainment and publicity of any form, I think that we're living in a different age of publicity, and I feel like every age has its own stars. I think that there were people who did amazing silent movies, and some of them never made it onto the talkies, as they used to call them, because they maybe were not great with acting with a voice, or they just held on to that particular age that they didn't transfigure into the next one. So I think when it comes to media right now, I feel like, TV presenters still exist, traditional TV presenters, but I feel like people who are social media stars are becoming exactly what, these other stars used to be in this previous generation that we've lived.
Do you think that because I guess my terms of like social media influencer, like when I hear social media influencer, I hear somebody that has an impact, or it's essentially what a public figure is usually.
Mm-hmm.
They have influence, they have power, they have an audience.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that sometimes in this realm of like social media influencing, I think that we're all influencing somewhat of the same thing
Mm.
in a different form or a different medium, right? I think that, I guess it's weird because we are promoting this idea or this notion that everybody's an influencer and that everybody can do it. But I think that we don't realize that not everybody is capable of being an influencer. Like we're giving people the notion to believe that everybody's a leader,
Mm.
when that's not innately everybody's quality or characteristics within themselves. Because with influencing comes power, comes like respect, comes all of that, but it also comes greatest Spider-Man quote, with great responsibility, with great
With great power comes great
yes, with great
responsibility.
yes. Thank you for saying it,
Yeah.
yes. And we don't realize how much responsibility that has, because you
Mm.
see all these influencers or public models or public figures either say the wrong thing, they do the wrong thing, because they don't understand how much power or responsibility they actually have. Like when, for example, if we're going to talk about streamers, like we don't understand how much power or respect or much admiration that somebody, for example, like a Kai Cenat has. Any move he makes, any decision he makes is watched by millions of people. And if you're not ready, or you're not even that you're not ready, but if you're not built for that, because you have to be built for it, then the messages that you portray or put out, or you can either stray this large population one way and it can be the completely wrong way, or you can stray them in the right way. And it's we don't I don't know if everybody is well equipped for that.
So what I think about that is, I think freedom of speech is important. People should be able to share their opinions, and I think we've never had more platforms of expressing that opinion, much more than now, in the times that we've lived. And I think in that, power is a very power is a beautifully terrible creature, because sometimes the people that have power are not supposed to have it, and sometimes the people that are not having it are supposed to have it. Um, and when you're given the microphone, it's important to present yourself in, I guess, to not to present yourself, or rather to use that particular position with good stride. But sometimes our best intentions get the better of us. So I think there's been different forms of power in the past, and what we're experiencing with influencers and social media personnel is a different form of power, and I don't feel like there's intrinsically anything wrong with that power. I think the people that have got the microphones should be able to lead with integrity. But we're human beings, and what integrity looks like to me was raised by an African mother. It might not be the same as you was raised by an American mother, right? So because of that indifference, sometimes we forget that we don't share the same opinion. And you know and sometimes you think that you've got the right opinion when you're an influencer, and sometimes you don't, and sometimes you get the people that are able to lead a community to an elevated space, and that is all dependent on the person. But I don't think there's anything intrinsically wrong with influencers are part of our generation. We're the next leaders and the next speakers and the next this and this and that, and it's important for people to have those microphones. But like I said, not all of them are always given to the right people.
Yeah, I do agree. I do believe, and in no way, shape, or form was that me trying to impose an idea that not everybody that should speak or could speak or whatever. But I do believe that it just should be carefully monitored about how you're going about your messages, or if you're using the microphone, make sure that you are speaking with integrity or speaking with high character or high morale, and kind of influencing them, ironically, in a good light, and not trying to stray the dog away from the pack.
Yeah. I feel like as time goes on, as the industry grows, because I definitely feel like this is not the highlight of the growth that we have right now. I feel like it's gonna grow to become a solid thing, and I do desire that one day when it does, that perhaps there's a sense of checking in balance and power, with the balance of power, because much like any good thing that has got power, it needs to be guided, because anything that you don't guide can lead people in trouble. And this is why in companies we've got HR, in governments we've got the Senate and we've got the whole entire Congress, in business we've got a board of directors. So I think it's important to have those, because yes, social media influencers can lead people astray. I mean, they have been. When you start looking at things like vaccines and scientific knowledge and data, certain people can skew that in their own way and make it seem like whatever they're speaking, since it's their voice of authority, they feel like they're justified sharing information. So I feel like, much like anything, ethics is still important.
I think we see that in podcasts now, ironically, as we're shooting a podcast. I think we see a lot of the top podcasts, or the podcasts that are our favorite podcasts, and we take a lot of what they say at face value, or we take a lot of it at a perspective where they're right, and everything that they say is agreeable. Like for most of it, you can, however you view, or your perspective on it can be correct if you agree with them or not. But I guess to me, I look at it, there's no right or wrong. There just is.
It just is.
And it's just how you want to interpret it. But that doesn't mean that it's what this person says, this is final. You know what I mean? Regardless of how much expertise you have, I think that there's always room for perspective. And it's something that we all share, right? As human beings, it's a beautiful thing that we all share perspective. Like your life changed your perspective in a certain way, and my life had perspective in my own way. So I think it's to your point, where we just have to, I guess, have better discernment, in what we choose to accept or invite or subscribe to into our lives.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think that I've lost my train of thought.
It's okay.
Yeah, I lost my train of thought. Please remind me what we're conversing about.
Essentially, how that we that not everybody, that what we say or what we promote shouldn't be subscribed to
Yes,
everybody. Yeah.
yes, yeah. So I think what I was speaking on before was just, I think ethics should be there. There should be a checking of a balance of power, and you spoke about how that is existing in podcasts right
Mm-hmm.
now. Um, I think I think I think when the industry, because the industry is now valuable, right? You've got influencers earning, a person like Mr. Beast is like worth $1 billion with a B,
Yeah.
So I think as the industry matures, and much like even Hollywood had to come to this at some point, as the industry matures, I think over time, and as we have all these awards that are coming out for podcasts and different influencers, I feel like over time it's going to be important to actually have a code of ethics, just much like journalism has a code of ethics,
Mm-hmm.
because when you hold that amount of power, that when you hold that sway, you could start a riot, or you could start a cult, or you could start something really good, but it really is dependent on the person
Yeah.
with the power.
Speaking of a journalist, I kind of feel right now on with the tie and the everything.
Yes, yes,
But no,
yes, yes.
I agree. I think ethics is something
Ethics, yeah, because I think there's an influencer that had something in Washington Square Park sometime last year.
Oh, it's Kai Cenat, yeah.
Yeah. Then that, people are arrested.
Yeah.
You
It's
know,
crazy, right? Like how somebody has so much power that they can elicit that much emotion.
you just say one simple phrase on social media and you fill out the whole entire area and then because of a lack of management of that crowd, then it becomes a riot.
But is that more or less on him, or is that more or less on the individuals?
I think it's three.
Yeah.
It's him, it's the police, it's the crowd.
Yeah.
When you don't communicate, when you bring an edgy crowd together, and then you don't set out ground rules, there is a possibility that edgy crowd could tap into their edgy energy and proceed forward to do whatever they want. When the police found out, they probably should have put some measures to control a crowd,
Yeah.
because a crowd can turn into a revolution. And there's nothing wrong with a revolution, but it can turn into one.
Yeah.
And then the people themselves, well, we are influenced by each other. So this is how important it is to come up with your own mind or your own way of behaving, so that you don't get swayed. But sometimes, even then, we are still swayed because of being in a crowd, peer pressure, and human influence.
You think it's part of that is because of the overstimulation that we experience?
No, I just think that we're just influenceable as human beings, because, like I said, we live in a society.
Yeah.
So sometimes you don't even know that you're being consciously influenced. Sometimes it's on a subconscious level. You hang out with your friends for like 2 weeks. 2 weeks straight. Chances are there's a word or two that you're gonna pick up from the vocabulary. So imagine the things that we're learning that we're not aware of. Yeah. So sometimes it's just really difficult when you place people in a crowd. They behave. They'll be, if there's one strong voice in that crowd that starts some trouble, there's an opportunity of that spreading like wildfire in a crowd, because we are just that influenceable. And this is why I feel that in this age where we are with technology, and not just technology, but just because everyone holds a strong opinion right now, the study of philosophy has never been greater as a need. The understanding of existence, of the human thought, the human existence, because then now you can be able to decipher things for yourself.
I agree, but then I also look at it from the other spectrum where I think that we've developed a lot of ideas. I think humanity has developed a lot of incredible and intelligent ideas, and I think that bar is so high, right? Like Marcus Aurelius, as a philosopher, how can we as humanity surpass his thoughts already? How can we surpass Friedrich Nietzsche's thoughts? How can we surpass Plato's thoughts? Seneca's thoughts. I think that it's never been harder to come up with more complex or more compelling ideas and thoughts or
Mm.
philosophies because of the bar that we now have to surpass or at least try to attain or reach has never been harder, right? Like it's never been harder to come up with better ideas. And I do believe maybe more philosophers can help. And I think that competition, in terms of trying to come up with these more complex ideas or these more complex thoughts or philosophies is needed. I think that's why Ryan Holiday is so great. He studies stoicism. He's kind of like dedicated his life to stoicism. I'm not sure if you know who the author is.
Yes. Yeah.
So
No, not the author, but I'm familiar with Stoicism.
yes.
Yeah, yeah.
So he's created all these books. Stillness is the key. What is the other things? He's basically taken other like Stoics ideas and he basically writes them. He talks about Marcus Aurelius a lot. Like I think that the pinnacle that we're trying to reach in terms of philosophy is so high that it might be hard to overcome, you know? Like I think it might be hard to try to get to that level or attain that level of enlightenment that I'm not too sure as a society that maybe we can be able to go higher than that. But I'm not sure right now currently that
We're
is
there.
existent.
So I've got a bit of uh, a difference of opinion when it comes to that particular topic, and I'm gonna give you context. Um, Often in when I've been interviewed in whether that's a whether that's a magazine or newspaper, whatever the case may be in the past, I'm often asked because I didn't study what I did in school, right? So I'm often asked, "Are you self-made?" And I feel like that is such a on a personal level. I feel like that's answering that question in the way it's framed is so misleading. And I'm just trying to give you context, right?
Mm-hmm.
So stay with me a little bit. Um, we are born devoid of information or knowledge. Anything that we know, we've been taught. Anything that we know, we've observed, whether that's within our environment, or the people that have raised us, or the communities that have surrounded us as we're growing up, or the schools that we went to, the books that we read, the movies that we watched, the the relatives that we got to hang out with. All of those things, they shape our reality. And I feel like we exist in a time where we are born, we learn the knowledge, and then I think we're just coming in to just just tweaking the timeline just a little bit. My opinion when it comes to the knowledge that we have, I feel like we're born devoid of all knowledge, screaming and wailing on this earth. Anything that we now know, it has been taught to us by other people. We've experienced it through our community, through school, through relatives, through friends, and so whatever knowledge that we have, like I said, it has been passed down. We have absorbed it, and absorbed it, or uh, uh, we have taken it, we've internalized it and made it our own.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like in that, my duty, at least how I feel it personally, my duty is not to create something new, because when you look at all the things that we have, there's a history behind it, right? So the letter being sent by a bird turned into the postman because we got it improved. So many birds used to get lost on the journey. So we started sending a man. And then we discovered that man needs a vehicle to move faster rather than just walking from estate to estate, door to door. And then we gave him a bicycle, and then eventually gave him a car. And then we realized, like, we need these letters to travel much faster, so let's put them on an airplane so that they can go to another country at a much faster rate. That kept on being iterated until now what we have, which is called the internet. Right. And the same thing happened. We leapt from horses to a car, and then from a car to a plane, and then from a plane to going out of space. So our idea is not to invent the Model T for the ideas that we come up with. Is to learn, like, what idea has already existed that is perfect and beautiful. How can we leap onto that and then make that idea better? So there is no new idea under the sun.
So you don't think it's any new philosophies, any new thoughts? It's just
I think
thoughts in different perspectives are easily digestible for us?
I think there are thoughts that exist in a different age, and those different perspectives are realized because of that time. So I don't feel like a niche would work in this particular 21st century that we're in, because the ideas that were realized then, the application and use case may be very different now. Even though intrinsically as human beings we don't change much, even though we think we change a lot, there is still context to times. Like wearing a gown that looked like a dress was popular at a particular age. Right now, it's a symbol that represents a particular person because of how they feel and how they want to be seen by the world, right? But then, during the French used to wear heels. Men who are French used to wear heels. And then now heels is seen as either feminine or representational of the feminine, whether or not the same sex or opposite sex wears it. It's now a representation of that. But before, it wasn't political, but then it was just a thing that normal people, normal people of that period of time wore. Yeah. So I feel like with context, everything changes, but then the philosophies exist. Like just in that same breath, heels are not a new thing, and within the 20th century, they've been predominantly been worn by women, but they're not a new thing. Yeah. The idea itself is not a new thing.
It's just who wears it now.
It's just who wears it now.
But
and how is it designed to fit that specific period of time?
Yeah, because from my understanding, from the most noble men and the most high class men wore the heels.
Yeah, they did.
Like King Louis wore heels.
Yeah, wigs too.
Yeah,
yeah, and makeup too.
I mean, that still probably takes place in like the entertainment or like TV, and like they still wear makeup.
Absolutely, but different context, right? Right now, if someone were to do that, it'll be seen as a way of expression.
Yeah.
Say, oh no, you decided to be seen. You love makeup. It becomes like a representation of oneself. But before, it was just normal day-to-day way, normal day-to-day garb. Yeah. So I feel like all these philosophies that have come about, it's just a matter of taking the best ones that are relatable to the situation, putting them through a filter of here and now, and then applying them on to what the application process that's appropriate.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
I like that, and I think that's because we're always thinking about new, but then where there's no innovation, right? Like the Apple phone is the same product, but it's just innovated in a different way.
Yeah. So
I guess maybe the philosophies, the thoughts, of the ideas that we come up with, maybe they just don't have to be so different than Nietzsche or Marcus Aurelius.
Look at look at data storage. Data storage has gone through immense change over the decades, over the centuries.
Yeah.
It went from us writing on rocks. Right, we used to write on rocks, like chisel out the rock and write in the whether that was simple information or not. And then we discovered that in the storage of that information, it would break. So we found better materials. We found wood, and then we found paper eventually, and that revolutionized storage. But then we kept on going, and look at what we have now. We've got a company like an Nvidia.
Yeah.
But we forget that we had to start at chiseling out from stones.
Oh man, these.
Yeah, I guess we're talking about these stone and glass tablets.
Yes, we were. This.
Because this is graphite.
Yeah.
In here, this is just like elemental, I guess, minerals that got turned into something else. But the simplest idea here was a bird that's sending a letter. So we don't have to create new things. We just have to build on top of them.
As I would love to continue this conversation, I do have one more question, but the cameras seem to trying to sway us a different way. What has been something that you have been trying to overcome lately?
I think the more you grow older as an adult, the more the more you become slow at executing certain things. There's a vibrancy in our youth that pushes us forward, whether stupidly or knowingly, and that makes us leap forward. And I feel like sometimes these days I hesitate a little bit before jumping in. I always end up jumping in, but that little hesitation, I think it irks the hell out of me.
A little tapping in the water, seeing if the water is warm.
Just like, is it, because before I was just like, I'm diving in. But, I'm realizing that is also the part of my head screaming, fool me once, shame on you. Or rather, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on you. But a fool cannot get fooled again. So I guess it's that adult part of me that is always fighting me to say, are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? Which is great. Balance, right? As we spoke about earlier. But then it's also important to leap. Because every great thing that we have created as human beings, it has come out of us leaping forward. Recognizing the past and then leaping forward.
So would you advise anybody to leap right now?
I think leaping is purpose, and I think purpose is important to human beings.
Damn it, that camera. The camera just ran.
Okay.
So leap forward. That's what you would say.
I would say leap forward. Leap forward with all your might. Leap forward with all the faith that you have in yourself. I feel like every great thing that we've ever created, it has come out of the results of us leaping forward. And, speaking on what you shared earlier, leaping forward is bravery. Leaping forward despite the fear of leaping forward, but leaping forward nonetheless.
Kudzai, it's been a pleasure, despite all the inconsistencies with the cameras. It's been an absolute pleasure. I definitely want to have you again in the future. It was a very insightful, philosophical, and an incredible conversation. So thank you for being here today with me.
Well, thank you for having me. I've had fun. I think we did not give each other time at all. We just
leaped it.
Let's leap it in philosophy. You know?
No, that's incredible though.
But I feel like some of the best conversations in my life that I've had up to this day, they've been married with diving in deep.
Well, I hope this was a conversation that you'll have one to remember.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for having me, and I hope I can join you again in the future as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you again.